This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. It's tax season, and we're all a bit tired of numbers. But here's one you need to hear. $16.5 billion. That's how much the IRS flagged for possible identity fraud last year. Now here's a good number. 100 million. That's how many data points LifeLock monitors every second. If your identity is stolen, they'll fix it, guaranteed. Save up to 40% your first year at LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
If we want to move the dial, if we want to move ourselves and our children toward a more patient, loving, kind place, we have absolutely everything we need. All we have to do is shine the light in our own direction.
Welcome to the Parent Footprint Podcast with Dr. Dan. I'm your host, Dr. Dan, and let me tell you about our mission at Parent Footprint. That mission is to make the world a more loving and compassionate place, one parent and one child at a time. We believe the key to raising happy, healthy, and engaged kids is for us parents to seek the same in our own lives: happiness, health, and engagement. We believe that awareness is the foundation for your vision of successful parenting, and with increased awareness and intention, we can be purposeful about leaving a healthy footprint on our children. Today's show is The Science of Attachment with our guest, Bethany Saltman. Bethany is an author, award-winning editor, and researcher. Her work can be seen in magazines like The New Yorker, The New York Magazine, Atlantic Monthly, Parents, and many others. We're going to be talking about her new book called Strange Situation, A Mother's Journey into the Science of Attachment. Bethany also is a best-selling book partner, communications director, and in-demand mindfulness mentor, helping writers and entrepreneurs at all stages of the creative process envision and execute their projects, including book proposals, content development, big ideas, and messaging. A longtime Zen student, Bethany is devoted to the fine art and game-changing effects of paying attention. She lives in a small town in the Catskills with her family. Bethany, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So I've been looking forward to this conversation because, as many know, Parent Footprint is about awareness, being aware of oneself, where we've come from, what we do, our emotions, our intentions, and how that impacts our children. And you set out on a very long journey to understand several aspects of this quest.
Indeed.
Yeah, so I know that's a statement and not a question. So I'm going to get to the question, which is, tell us how this journey started.
It was a long journey and it continues. The journey started, I in my acknowledgments for the book, I said, this book was many years in the making if you don't count my whole life. So really, in a lot of ways, I've been on this journey forever. But I know that what you really mean is, when did this particular part of the journey start? And I would say that it started really 14 years ago when my daughter Azalea was born. So that was the beginning of these stirrings of questions of, what is this love business all about? Why does it not feel the way I thought it was going to feel? Why is my maternal love, which was very much intact from the moment she was born? I loved her. I thought she was, the sweetest thing that had ever been born. I enjoyed her company. I did all the quote bonding that one might expect or want, but at the same time, I was still myself. I was still kind of irritable, angry, edgy, all the things that I've always, had to deal with being myself. And that really surprised me. And I was nervous about that. And I wondered kind of what good is this love if I can still be so frustrated and impatient with this beautiful infant that I just worked so hard to give birth to. It really set me on edge and made me wonder what was going on with me. Was there something wrong with me? And then I was working with that question. I was writing a column for a local magazine on being a Buddhist mother, which I was and still am, and started to do a lot of research for these monthly columns, and came across the idea of attachment separate from what I had heard when I was a new mother, which was Dr. Sears' attachment parenting, which I had some issues with and concerns about. I started to learn about attachment. I started to see pictures of Mary Ainsworth. I started to read about her laboratory procedure, The Strange Situation. And I thought, oh, this is something that I can really sink into. And in fact, that's what I did. 10 years of,
You did.
I did 10 years of studying attachment later. Now the book is out, and that's the beginning of that journey.
And, it speaks to your being a Buddhist, your, insight, your awareness, your ability to pay attention. And I'm thinking, as you were talking, I'm not supposed to feel this way. So first, it's this. I don't know that everyone. I don't think everyone explores that. First off, but second off, I was thinking, where do we get the messages about how we're supposed to feel and be?
Well, that's a great question. A lot of people have written about particularly maternal ideas, patriarchal ideas about women being in service to babies, less than complete humans. Really sort of just, the creators, the whole idealization of women and mothers, the sort of maternal Madonna concept. A lot of those ideas that have kept women in a certain position in our culture for, tens of thousands of years. And, that's certainly one aspect of it. But I think it's also, as you mentioned from the Buddhist point of view, certainly it has a particular flavor as a woman, but as human beings, I think we are so limited by our view. And that's what the Buddha called delusion, our limited view of how we are, quote, supposed to feel, how we think the world is supposed to be. And so, where does that come from? I wish I knew. It's our limited view.
Right. And I've said this on a different show. I brought up the shoulds, Albert Ellis, right? Albert Ellis, who started rational emotive behavioral therapy. He used to say, stop shoulding on yourself. Like all of these shoulds. You love that? Like all these shoulds we have. Okay, so you had this, I'm not supposed to feel like this. I'm not supposed to still be myself, right? Like this child was supposed to transform me, and I'm supposed to be more patient. Yeah. So you talk about Mary Ainsworth, and those of us who have studied development, attachment, and psychology are familiar with her amazing work. So tell everyone about her work, her seminal work, and the road from there.
Yeah, well, Mary Ainsworth she died in 1999, a celebrated researcher within developmental psychology, but really unknown outside of that very limited field. And when people talk about attachment these days, people always think of John Bowlby, who was the British gentleman who came up with the theory of attachment in the 1950s. And Mary Ainsworth actually worked with him, was not his student, was never his student, although people always refer to her as his student. She got a job with him in London because her husband wanted to go to London. It's a long 1950s dutiful wife story that ended up, it ended well. But, she was doing what she thought she was supposed to do. And she ended up getting this job with John Bowlby, who was studying attachment at a clinic. And he was developing the idea of attachment. And she was very suspicious of it at first. She really didn't buy it. And then with another thing that she had to do with her husband, Len, was to go to Africa. Another thing she wasn't that excited to do, but she ended up going. And she said, well, let me try to develop a little research project and test this idea that Bowlby is starting to develop. And so that's what she did in Uganda with 26 families. And she started to see before her very eyes that in fact attachment was happening These babies weren't just connected to their mothers because their mothers fed them, which was the prevailing idea at the time. She started to see that mothers and babies were in actual relationships, and that there was this coming and going between them, a back and forthing that was miraculous and delightful. And she said it was a sudden and total change in perspective, a total paradigm shift. She then went back to the United States, got a job at Johns Hopkins, and wanted to replicate that study, which she did in Baltimore, otherwise known as the Baltimore Study, a longitudinal study of, again, 26 families. She studied each family for 72 hours, like Jane Goodall with chimps, just, she and her researchers watching mothers and babies in the nursery, in feedings, bath time, everything, looking at what she called critical situations of relationship, not a checklist of behaviors of when does the mother smile, when does the baby smile, but what is going on between these two people. And at the end of that, at the end of her first year, she realized that she needed a little bit more data to understand how mothers and babies worked. So she developed the strange situation in half an hour. She said she came up with this thing, the strange situation.
The famous strange situation.
A laboratory procedure that takes 20 minutes to perform, a series of reunions and separations between a caregiver and a baby. Originally, of course, it was mothers and babies. It's been, discovered, replicated tens of thousands of times around the world with pretty much every kind of baby and caregiver we can imagine. And it's been proven to show that within that 20 minutes, like an X-ray, we can see the inner workings of the attachment system. We don't see everything about people, but we see something very, very foundational. And like in Buddhism, we understand karma as cause and effect. The way that a baby and a mother relate to one another by 1 year old is going to impact the baby forever. It can change and it will change, but it's something that exists and has to be tended with. Because if you don't tend to it, it will tend to itself.
And I got a kick out of in your writing. You talk about you were hoping to find in some ways that like the mother response didn't matter, and you're like, oh crap, it matters a lot.
Yeah, it does matter a lot. But it's not what I thought. It's not the Sears style mattering of like, you better, co-sleep, you better nurse, you better never let the baby cry, you better wear the baby in a sling. It's not a behaviorist kind of model. It's about what happens on the inside. That was Mary Ainsworth's brilliance. It shone through from her to me, the way a mother's the way any caregiver's insides shine through. And so, that was for me a very terrifying message, because I thought maybe there's something deep and dark wrong with me that is going to be, given to my daughter, whom I love so much. And because who we are is what we have to give, it is important to take care of ourselves. So the message really is, whether or not we feel totally at ease with who we are and happy with who we are, we can always move ourselves in a happier, more aware, more delightful direction by bringing awareness to our inner state. So that is really the core message of this. It's not that it doesn't matter what we do, but what it is that matters isn't what we think it is. And it's much more forgiving. It's much more whole person. And it's much more generative.
And I think that's what we want everyone to hear who's listening is that, as you said, it's forgiving and it's more whole. And, there's so many people who feel, I'm broken. There's something wrong with me, and I'm going to mess up my child. And so tell us about how that's not necessarily true.
Yeah. I mean, this is the big point, right? And this is why this book is kind of it's a dangerous territory because we're so filled with shame. So many of us are so filled with shame. I certainly was. I am. Less today than I used to be. And so it's hard to even hear the message that whoever you are, whatever you are, however you feel is enough. And it doesn't mean that we shouldn't be held accountable. It doesn't mean that our behavior doesn't matter. What it means is that if we want to move the dial, if we want to move ourselves and our children toward a more patient, loving, kind place, we have absolutely everything we need. All we have to do is shine the light in our own direction. So we tend to get obsessed with our kids as behaviorist kind of tools or objects. Like if I quote do it wrong with my kid is going to be this way, as though there's like this mathematical equation, and it's just not true. Which is why the Dr. Sears model makes me crazy, because it's hijacking this concept of attachment, which is this very internal experience between beings, and it's magical and it's mystical and it's extraordinary. And it's trying to, put it into a checklist of behaviors. And so, yes, our behavior sometimes has to change. Like it's not okay to yell at a baby. It's really not okay to yell at a baby. That's not good for anybody. But the way to change that isn't to shame myself and beat myself up. It's to shine a light inside, become more aware of what was happening inside of me before the yell, all the ideas, all the shaming language, all the voices that are saying, God, you suck at this. Here you go again. You should know better. What's wrong with you? You've been, on that cushion, on your meditation cushion for all these years, and you're still doing this, or the ideas that come before the yell, the like, oh my God, this is going to be my life forever. Like, oh my God, my kid is just like me. Oh my God, my kid is going to be spoiled. Oh my God, the doomsday voices. And so that's where our kindness needs to really enter. And because of the way that we are conditioned, and because of the way it is, we're conditioned to think about parents and motherhood as though we've got all the answers. We think it's somehow selfish to take the time to notice our own thinking.
Exactly. And you just gave me a shameful parenting flashback. 3 kids under 4, holding the newest one, pushing one on the swing and the other one on a play structure I'm hoping is not going to fall and hurt themselves while my wife was getting a break. And I remember pushing and looking around and totally sleep deprived, because our kids did not sleep that much, thinking, how did my life get deduced to this? Like, what happened? And then immediately thinking, what is wrong with you for thinking that about yourself as a parent right away?
Exactly.
And I was thinking of you saying to yourself, after sitting for years and meditating, I still react like this. And I'm thinking, like, yeah, after all these years, yes, you're still human.
Exactly.
there's no way around that.
Exactly.
So the shine the light.
Yeah.
I wanted to highlight that, because what I'm hearing you saying is shining the light inside is the act and the art and the ability to start becoming aware. Is that okay?
Correct. Yep.
So instead of shaming, because this is so key for everyone to hear, because instead of what we do to our kids, it's how what do we actually do to ourselves to impact our relationship with our child and that connection and attachment. So walk us through a little bit about what's the process when you unavoidably hit the shameful thought to change it into awareness that then could ultimately change into doing something a little differently that's more healthy for everyone.
Yeah. Well, my method is through meditation. That is the way I have found to learn to slow my mind down enough to see, because the first step of developing awareness is seeing the thoughts that are arising, that are leading to this snapping or the raging or the worse, you know. And so we have to be able to see our thoughts and then the reactions that our body has when we have certain thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's going to go about that differently. Meditation is just a tool. It's a fantastic tool, a well-honed technology to help us get there. But that's not going to be for everybody. So journaling is an amazing way, but or talking to a friend, psychotherapy, of course, and the thing that pulls all those things together is curiosity. And having some space around identifying with our thoughts and being, like I said, curious, like letting a question mark arise. And that can feel very threatening, because I know for myself, I spent, I've many times felt like if I don't shame myself or beat myself up, I am going to do more harm. Like I have to somehow squelch this part of myself. And in fact, and that's why this attachment journey has been so important for me, because now I'm convinced that that's not true. And so I can allow myself the space to say, God, why am I still, why is it so hard for me to believe that I should have these angry thoughts?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then I can, explore myself a little bit. And just by airing it out a little bit, it really loses power. When we, try to turn away from something, it becomes much, much, much more powerful.
And the diffusing, I had a important guide in my life who I remember whenever I would consult with him about my punitive, negative thoughts. And he said, you know what? All you need to say to those thoughts is, interesting, I'm thinking that, and let it go. And I couldn't believe it's such a powerful technique.
It's so powerful.
Yeah. So we don't need to, even we're talking about attachment, we don't want to be attaching to these negative thoughts. So then when one is shining the light inward and being attachment aware, what does a parent think about? What should a parent think about when they're being attachment aware?
That's such a great phrase, attachment aware, because the secure autonomous adult, as per the adult attachment interview, the hallmark of a securely attached adult is that they value attachment. So in order to value attachment, you have to be attachment aware. So really just becoming attachment aware is going to take you very far. And hopefully my book is really going to help with that. That's, the hope. Just becoming aware that we're all wired to attune to the people in our charge, in our care.
Yes.
We may not like it all the time.
No. Particularly the teenagers that we have.
Well, I have to speak up for teenagers. I have a 14-year-old, and I feel like they get a really bad rap. And so, especially girls. So, anyway, but I know what you're saying. And of course, attachment behaviors are designed to get our attention, positive or negative.
So when you think, no, go ahead, continue.
No, go ahead, please.
So I was just thinking about all of the work that, you mentioned your book, which we're here to talk about, all of the work that you have read and studied about attachment. So there is a ton of stuff out there. Your book and your work puts a different spin on it, and I'm going to say takes it to a different level or a different plane. So tell everyone how this takes on Mary's work, amazing work, and packages it in a way where you're dispelling the myths and providing a roadmap.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you for that. That's a grand compliment. I love hearing that. Thank you so much. Because, I never set out to write a memoir, FYI, a memoir. Please help me say that correctly. Memoir. And I really wanted to tell Mary's story and the story of attachment. So I like to think that I was telling my story in service to this idea. And the myth that I'm trying to dispel is, first of all, Dr. Sears, behaviorist spin on attachment, that you have to do something for your child to become attached. Our children are going to attach to us. It may not be the optimal secure attachment, but it's going, unless, they've been raised in a 1950s orphanage, which, we hope is not the case, they will be attached. It may be an insecure attachment, but they will be attached. So just let's let that thing go. And it doesn't matter if you breastfeed. It doesn't matter if you sleep train. It doesn't matter if you wear a sling. None of those things matter. Mm-hmm. The other myth that I would like to dispel, and not that those things are bad, obviously they can be lovely if they're tuned into what each parent needs. But the other, and this isn't so much a myth, but people talk a lot about attachment styles,
right?
And that's a complicated world, and it's very different from the work of Mary Ainsworth and her predecessors, such as Mary Main, who came up with the adult attachment interview. The adult attachment interview reveals something about us that is unconscious, and it's that unconsciousness that gets passed down generation after generation. The adult styles questionnaires is interesting, and it's really more of a personality quiz, but it's not really getting to the thing that is so deep and so beautiful about in the attachment, the patterns of attachment work of the developmental psychology world. Now, that the attachment styles work, I will say, is not what I've been studying. Mm-hmm. So I can't, I certainly don't mean to demean it in any way. I know that it's incredibly rich, but it is different. And so I would like readers to understand that when they're thinking about attachment styles or using the phrase attachment styles, they're talking about something that you can see about yourself, whereas the other is a little bit more mystical, thus intriguing to me.
Intriguing, yes. And so let me just do a little sidebar of what people might be thinking is, so a lot of the attachment styles that people know about and are trained in are, ultimately the secure attachment, but also the avoidant, the disorganized attachment. There's different names for them. This is not what you're talking about.
Well, they have many of the same names. So from the attachments, from the Mary Ainsworth world, the Bowlby Ainsworth world, we have as babies, you can be securely attached. You can be insecure avoidant or insecure resistant or ambivalent. As an adult, you can be secure autonomous or insecure dismissive or insecure preoccupied. Disorganization is considered a thread that can run throughout any of the other categories. Few children are considered primarily disorganized.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of terms that are used, to your point. Like there are the main terms and then there's a subset, and it can get quite, from a reader perspective, it could get quite overwhelming with the terminology. So if we can boil it down, what should people be thinking about when it comes to healthy attachment?
Delight. That's what they should be. That's the North Star.
That's it. Delight.
Yeah. Yeah. Forget about all that stuff. That's for the very technical. I find it compelling as heck. I mean, I'm just so intrigued. And as a Zen practitioner, I see the way the mind works in terms of security, attachment. I mean, security, avoidance, and resistance. It's like so interesting about like clinging and, the way the mind scrambles for safety. So I am a total nerd about it. But when you're you maybe don't want to go that deep into it, what you could think about is delight. Like, where do I find delight in my heart? And how can I uncover more of that? Shame is pretty much the opposite of delight. So we can, if we're feeling shame, let's move in a different direction, or, take the top off and see what's beneath the shame. Because what Mary found was that the the telltale sign of a secure relationship between a baby or a child and their caregiver is mutual delight. Not all the time, not even most of the time, but it exists. And a child must be able to feel the parent's delight in him or her. And a parent can't delight in anything, even, especially their child, if they can't feel delight in him or herself.
I love this. I mean, so you've boiled this down to something that sounds so simple. So instead of all these terms, people, we're just focusing on delight. I love that. And something you just said there is so important, is that, so many adults do struggle for a variety of reasons, whether they're from their childhood or from the current situations, stressors, and then there's this, oh gosh, again, if I'm like this, how can I have a healthy relationship with my child? And what you're saying is you can, and you need to do whatever you can for yourself to be healthy.
Yes. So, take right now this insane, strange situation that we are all in.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big Real Housewives fan. Like, I love all the Housewives. And now my daughter's 14, so she can start watching it with me. So sometimes I'll be like, girl, let's just have a marathon and we'll watch 3 episodes. We'll eat junk food and we'll sit and we'll watch Real Housewives. Now, is this what is sort of wholesome delight that people might think I'm referring to? No, it's trashy. It's not particularly healthy, but we're connecting to each other, and I delight in those housewives, and Azalea can feel my delight in that, and I'm delighting in her, delighting in it and them and this experience, and we have these great conversations about relationships, because that's all the housewives are about. And that's, it's great. It's light. It's pleasurable. Now, is that what we do most of the time together? No, but under these circumstances, it works. And so if I can keep the delight as my North Star and value that over these heavy ideas about how I should be parenting right now. Like, oh my God, we should be playing a board game. We should be doing a puzzle. Why aren't we playing Monopoly every day? Why aren't I baking bread like everybody on Instagram? Or maybe I am baking bread and now I'm worried that I'm, not making enough pickled ramps or whatever it is. It's the shoulds will never stop.
No. So really it's I don't know if this is the right word. It's quality of experience with each other, right?
But it's in ourselves.
Right.
That's what I really want to bring people back to.
Okay.
Particularly as moms, because we lose ourselves, women lose themselves in relationships so fast. It's we barely even entered the scene.
Right. So if you're watching Housewives and you're thinking, this is wrong, what am I doing? I should be doing this. I can't believe I'm exposing my daughter to this. What are people going to think? You're not acting in delight, and that is going to impact the experience as well.
Exactly. It is a genuine delight for me.
Mm-hmm.
So, obviously we use our best judgment, people. Please don't, take this the wrong way. There are adult delights that, are not appropriate for children. I'm aware of this.
Yes.
But this is something, that I really like. And then I do the same with her. If she really enjoys a show, she's really into The Simpsons right now. So I'll, watch The Simpsons with her. And I love listening to her watch The Simpsons in the other room. Oh my God, it is so sweet. I don't like The Simpsons. I'm not a Simpsons fan, but there's something about listening to her, and she laughs out loud. She cooks herself her mac and cheese. It delights me. She delights me because she's delighting in what she's delighting in. Now, is this what I had in mind that my 14-year-old would be doing at the end of her 8th grade year? No. Do I want her, doing all these other sort of cool things like kickboxing and reading and making movies and, the more wholesome activities, of course, but if delight is my North Star, we're hitting the mark some of the time. So that's good.
That is good. I'm thinking back to, the Ainsworth studies, both in Uganda and then back here in the States. And what would you say? I'm trying to think of how to break this down. Because for listeners of having kids of all ages, what's a marker for them to see in their child, let's say as toddler, as elementary school, as teenager? Where's the feedback of, I am engaging in an attachment process where my child is showing, showing relational attachment, showing the things that we're wanting for our kids. Security. Yes.
Yeah. That's a great question. I hesitate to answer it though, because temperament does play quite a role, So these things show up in very different ways for different kids. So I would really bring people again back to their own experience. And, I could name things that tend to be the case. Grit, a kind of, delay, ability to delay gratification. But doing well in school, being, good with peers. But what you're really looking at in a child is the ability to mentalize from early on. But that changes so much depending on where the child is developmentally and their age. But the ability for a child to have empathy, for a child to recognize their own states of mind will change. These things come online pretty young. You'd be surprised. But because that's such a difficult, area, and it tends to get a little shamey, my kid's not doing this that, Saltman said should be happening. And because that's actually not my area of expertise anyway, I would really encourage people to keep checking in with themselves and to keep looking for that delight, mutual delight, that we can all recognize.
Mutual delight.
Mutual delight. Is the child delighting in themselves? Are they delighting in us? Are they delighting in their version of The Simpsons? Is there delight in the field?
And so for folks who, we know that first year life is so important, as you said earlier on. For those folks who they were in a tough situation when their child or children were born, or when their kids were young, difficult circumstances, difficult emotional issues. It's also, as you said, I just want to highlight, it's not too late, right? The attachment process goes on for quite some time.
Forever. And that is so important. In my book, I talk about how I really transformed my relationship with my father, though he's been dead for many years. And the change in that relationship is going to affect my daughter Azalea, because I'm different now. And so I'm different. And so she's going to be affected by the change that happens within me, because I changed my relationship with a dead guy.
Yeah, that's powerful.
It's powerful. And this is not, one of the reasons why I was so excited to spend 10 years studying the science of this stuff is so that I could talk about this and really try to convince people, because it's not just some new agey kind of mystical thing. This is real. And what happens inside of us is so, it really does transmit to our children. And it's non-linear though, so I can do something about I can change my past, which will affect my daughter's future and her children. So it's never, ever, ever too late. So let's say you had a difficult year. I had a difficult first year. My daughter had a difficult first year with me, I'm sure. I don't know how she would have done in the strange situation exactly. I mean, we could never know. But, we can always transform the future by transforming the present. And we do that by bringing awareness to the present. So we bring awareness to the difficulty that we're having. We bring awareness to all those shoulds. We bring awareness to the experience of shame in our bodies, as difficult as it is. It's the only way.
And I love how awareness keeps coming up, right? The light has to keep coming back to us for us to be healthy and raise healthy people. Like there's no way around it.
There is no way around it. Mary Ainsworth came up with this phrase, one of the many that I love of hers so much, the excellent informant. So the mothers in Uganda that she found had the securest babies. She didn't use those terms then, but she then, started to think about it that way. It turns out that they were all mothers that she found were what she called excellent informants. It meant that they could tell a good story about their baby. They were able to notice things about their babies. They were able to remember things about their babies. They delighted in sharing experiences about their babies. And she was really taken by the fact that a lot of the women, she went away feeling like they were hospitable, they were open, they were chatty. But when she got back to her desk and looked at the notes, there wasn't much there. There wasn't a lot of detail.
Mm-hmm.
And the detail comes from awareness. If you aren't aware of what's going on around you, you aren't going to notice the kinds of cry that your baby has, when they're hungry, when they're wet, when they're, restless, when they're distracted, when they're scared. And that awareness develops inside of our own bodies. There is no other place it can happen.
If there is one thing you hope people take away from your book, one main thing, and I know that's a hard question.
That is.
That's 10 years. So I'm just trying to distill,
yeah.
And you can fudge that. If you need to add something, like what do you hope people take away from your book?
I hope that people take away the hope that that this life is so magical, and that delight is always available, regardless of where you find yourself the moment before. And all it takes is a shift in our state of mind. And we can transform the universe, including our children's futures.
Mm-hmm. That's big.
That's big.
Yeah.
It's big, and it's real. And it doesn't matter who you are or what kind of suffering you have had to withstand. And we have, the suffering that people have to withstand is overwhelming. I've had mine, but I know that people have a lot. Mm-hmm. And so this is not some Pollyanna experience. And, a lot of the attachment researchers work with the most at-risk populations in New York City and around the world. And that this awareness practice, this becoming more capable of what they call reflective functioning or mind sight, or the ability to mentalize, this awareness practice helps everybody by orders of magnitude, to the point where people might not get their kids taken away because they're able to see themselves. This is it's not abstract. It's not woo-woo.
It's not. It's real.
Yeah.
It's real.
It's very real. It's real. And it's hard work. It sounds like, shift your state of mind. Yeah, try it.
Yeah, exactly. It takes it takes a lot of intention and perseverance. But first, as we're talking about, it takes awareness. It all starts with that awareness.
Right. And the reason why I've been able to do it is because I love my daughter so much that I am willing to work this hard. She's worth it.
It is time for the Parent Footprint Moment question.
Oh boy.
Here we go. Tell us about a time that you became aware of yourself as a person or as a parent, and that new awareness had a positive impact on your child?
Mm. That is such a great question. Well, so when I was working on these columns that I referred to earlier, and I got to interview really cool people about parenting and everything, really, and then write about it, I had the opportunity to interview John Kabat-Zinn, the mindfulness
Guru.
expert. Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. And I was really excited because my daughter was around, I think 3.5 or 4. And I was, things had gotten better, but I still struggled. And I had this idea that he was going to give me, I was going to, have this conversation with him and impress him with my practice, and that he would somehow give me a pass. He would, I would sort of do a kind of Buddhist confession, and that he would tell me that I'm on the right track and that all will be well. Don't, beat yourself up, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So we had this conversation, and he said, parenting really just comes down to one thing. It comes down to staying connected. And I said, yeah, but I don't want to stay connected all the time. That's really hard for me. And he was like, well, how old is your daughter? And I told him 3.5 or 4, or however old she was. And he said, well, I have to tell you, I have really strong feelings about these kinds of things. Your daughter didn't ask to be born. Mm-hmm. And I was like, whoa, not what I was expecting, not what I was hoping. And I realized that he was right, that, up until that time, I was starting to look into attachment. I was working really hard at being a better person, a kinder parent, more patient, more loving, but I still felt a little bit like a victim. I still felt a little bit like, oh, woe is me. This is hard. I can kind of fall back on my difficult childhood. I can fall back on all the reasons why I might be impatient and whatever. But in that moment, I woke up and I said, oh my God, I'm an adult and I brought this child into the world. She did not ask to be born. It doesn't mean that I am a bad person, but I am ready to be held accountable. And that's really when this journey for me began in earnest, where I said to myself, no more bullshit.
Yep.
I'm taking this seriously because this is serious. I brought this person into the world.
And this is on me.
This is on me.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we do that without shame?
Beautiful.
That's the question. Yeah. And I like to think that has positively impacted my child.
I would confirm that belief. Yes, I will validate that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for your sharing today. And you're so excited about your book being out there for everyone to gain this wisdom. And of course, through a total honest, transparent, humorous, like you put yourself obviously into this book, and you let people see you, which is what makes this whole process so human and accessible.
Thank you. That's so nice to hear.
So let everyone know where they can find your book and your writings. Sure.
So I have a website, BethanySaltman.com, and that's SALTMAN, no Z. I'm also on Twitter at Bethany Saltman, and I'm new on Instagram, Bethany_Saltman. You can get my book anywhere. All bookstores. Please go to independent bookstores whenever possible. And, coming out with a book during this COVID thing, especially after 10 years, has not been for the faint of heart. It's been complicated, tricky. I would really appreciate the support. And, if you want to write a review anywhere, that's always welcome. And I'm super into these conversations. I love connecting to parents. Random House has a whole sort of author chat thing that they're doing for book clubs and all the rest. So check out my website, check out Random House's website, and see if anyone would be interested in doing book clubs and having me come. There is a lot of possibility for that, especially these days.
Awesome. And we are going to spread the word and share. So thank you so much. Be safe, be healthy,
you.
wishing you the best.
This was awesome. I really appreciate the conversation.
Likewise. Until next time. All right, everyone. That concludes our show for today. You know where to find us, www.parentfootprint.com. Subscribe to the show. Tell others about it. Join us in our mission to make the world a more loving and compassionate place, one parent and one child at a time. Be the person you want your child to become. Strive for that daily. And as always, ask yourself the guiding question, what footprint do you want to leave?